I told Mark on WeChat that I agreed to the divorce. He couldn't wait and sped all the way home. Yes, he couldn't wait because his mistress, Chloe, was running out of patience. Mark's reason for the divorce was ridiculous. He claimed a real man couldn't let the woman he loved live in the shadows forever. It was laughable. Who did he think he was? The god of sun, shining on everyone? When Chloe first crawled into his bed, didn't she know Mark was married? How did she suddenly become the victim who couldn't stand him being someone else's husband? Because she couldn't stand it, I, the lawful wife, had to be pushed into the dark. Why didn't anyone care about my feelings? What did I do wrong to deserve this? These things used to make me furious, but now they didn't move me at all. Holding the hospital report that confirmed my late-stage breast cancer, I deeply regretted wasting my precious time on them. This past year of divorce battles had turned me into an ugly version of myself. Listening to Mark's vicious insults and seeing Chloe's smug face, I had become completely hysterical. I refused to let go just to spite them. During our last fight, Mark said he would rather leave with nothing than deal with a piece of trash like me again. Trash? His words cut to the bone. Once upon a time, I was the dream girl of many. Every business partner envied Mark for marrying a beautiful, capable, and elegant woman. Now, in his eyes, I was just trash. I had to admit I lost completely. And I lost with deep resentment. I thought I was numb to pain after everything. But when I got that death sentence from the hospital, true terror hit me. The thought of going to a dark place alone forever made me burst into tears. I cried until I fell asleep. In my dream, I held Mark's hand tightly, weeping, "No matter how long it takes, you must come find me. I'm so scared to be alone." Mark looked just as bright and warm as he did 10 years ago when we first met. He smiled gently and said, "I will." That promise instantly comforted me. I realized how deeply I still relied on him. How could he bear to throw me away? After that dream, the hatred faded. I wouldn't forgive him, but I decided to stop fighting. Letting go was my own salvation. If I had realized this earlier, maybe I wouldn't have gotten cancer. The doctor said my bottled-up anger was the root of the illness. It really wasn't worth it. The world is full of great men. Why was I so obsessed with Mark? Chapter 2. When I looked up, Mark was walking through the door, bathed in the afternoon sun. It felt like 10 years ago when he ran to me from the basketball court, blushing as he asked, "Rachel, will you be my girlfriend?" Seeing my silence, he added anxiously, "I'll treat you well for the rest of my life." Those words were still ringing in my ears, but I was already an abandoned wife. Mark glanced at me first to check if I was stable. For the past year, every meeting had ended in screaming matches. But today, I was strangely calm. I held out my hand. "Give it to me." He hesitated before handing over the divorce papers. His lips trembled slightly. "Chloe likes this house. I'll give you another 50 million. Go buy a new one. Or you can just pick any luxury condo our company developed. I used to fight for this house because I put my heart and soul into building it. Every piece of furniture and decoration was chosen by me. It held all my memories of love. It was also supposed to be the home for my little girl, whom I lost because of late-night overwork. The pink nursery still had a small rocking horse inside. Chloe just wanted the satisfaction of a winner. She didn't care about this house. Only an idiot like Mark would think she was innocent and fragile. But none of it mattered anymore. If he wanted it, he could have it. Love was gone, so why die protecting a house? I wondered how they would feel living here, thinking about the dead ex-wife every single day. I actually looked forward to that. I flipped straight to the signature page. I never worried about the money. Mark knew my capabilities, and he didn't have the guts to cheat me out of my share. Half of the estate belonged to me, and I took it without guilt because we built this wealth together. Seeing me sign so quickly, Mark became anxious. He pressed his hand over mine. What kind of trick are you playing now? Just signing papers. I pushed his hand away and signed my name in a smooth script. See you at the government office in a month, I said calmly. Mark stood there, frowning. I joked, what's wrong? Regretting it now that it's over? Too late. I have a germ aversion. I don't take back trash that someone else has used. Mark slammed the door and left. My heart sank with the sound of the door closing. Mark's love came so fiercely that I couldn't resist it. When it left, it was so cold and brutal that I still couldn't withstand it. Chapter 3. 1 month was plenty of time for a dying person to prepare. I didn't plan to buy another house. I just rented an apartment since I wouldn't live long anyway. I wanted to go somewhere warm and lively, so I wouldn't feel lonely or scared by myself. There wasn't much to pack in the house. I left everything related to Mark behind. After living there for so long, very few things actually belonged only to me. Taking them away didn't even change the look of the house. On the last day of the month, I left the keys under the doormat. That used to be our little secret, and I returned it to him at the very last moment. I put on heavy makeup because my complexion had grown terrible, and I didn't want to look pathetic during the divorce. When I arrived at the office, Mark was already there. The passenger window of his Bugatti was half open, showing Chloe's beautiful face. He brought his new lover just to finalize a divorce. Did she need to see it with her own eyes? Or were they getting married right away? I sneered. Mark tried to walk ahead proudly. When we got married, he walked in front, and I followed him with my head down. This time, I refused to walk behind him. I stopped. Mark walked a few steps, noticed I wasn't moving, and ran back anxiously. What's wrong? Regretting it? I caught a flash of hope in his eyes, but it vanished quickly. I regained my usual elegance. We are getting divorced, Mark. Show some manners. Ladies first. I walked right past him. My whole life had been spent rushing to keep up with his footsteps. No wonder he changed. A man who only looks ahead never notices the woman behind him. Chapter 4. After finishing the paperwork, Mark looked at me. You look pale. Are you sick? I almost laughed. Where are you going? Let me drive you, he offered sincerely, which sounded completely ironic to me. I glanced at Chloe, who was waiting impatiently outside the car, and smiled faintly. Want your new girl to enjoy her victory lap? I won't play along, CEO Mark. Mark's eyes froze for a second. You didn't buy a new house, and you sold your car. Where are you living? Why did you sell the car? Are you tracking me now, Mark? I'm just worried, he said with difficulty. Save your worry for someone who needs it. I turned and walked away, done with his fake drama. On the flight to Miami, I relived the past 10 years. The happier the memories, the deeper they stabbed my chest. I told myself this would be the last time I cried for him. Once the plane landed, a new life would begin. As long as I was alive, I would do what I loved. Miami didn't disappoint. The North was trapped in a freezing, lifeless winter, but here it felt like early summer, warm, bright, and full of life. I used to want to take a long vacation here with Mark. But early in our marriage, we were too busy with the startup. By the time the business grew huge, he had already taken someone else. I had seen Chloe's secret social media account before. She posted photos enjoying the sun, and the man's back in the picture belonged to Mark. Her caption read, "Even his back looks like happiness." When I confronted him back then, he claimed it was just a company team-building trip. He didn't lack time for a vacation, he just lacked time for me. During the early days of the company, everything was brutal. I had a miscarriage from overwork. Once the business stabilized, Mark said he cared about my health and asked me to step down to rest at home. I trusted him and stopped paying attention to the business. I didn't know that Chloe, a nobody, was promoted to his special assistant the very day after I left. When did they start? I didn't know, but it must have been a long time ago. Forget it. They were just trash. Since I decided to let them go, I would just treat them as if they died before me. Chapter 5. The weather in Miami was perfect. I regretted not letting go sooner. My best friend, Nora, called me countless times. I wasn't ready to face her anger yet. After delaying for days, I finally called her back on a lazy afternoon. As expected, she screamed at me for letting that toxic couple off too easily. She cursed their entire family tree. I loved her fiery temper. I couldn't bring myself to curse, but hearing her do it made me feel vindicated. I asked how she found out about the divorce. She said Mark reached out to her. Chloe wanted to renovate the entire house and complained my personal things were in the way. Since I blocked Mark everywhere, he went to Nora to tell me to take my stuff. Tell him to throw it all away, I said. Nora paused. Even the things you prepared for little Lily? My heart clenched. Does Mark want to throw those away too? I thought he anticipated Lily's arrival as much as I did, but men are never that sentimental. I took a breath. Burn them for Lily. I had insisted on buying a burial plot for Lily back then, and it turned out to be the right choice. Before coming to Miami, I bought the plot right next to hers for myself. That way, I could be with my baby girl and never feel lonely again. Chapter 6. After I spent 2 weeks in Miami, Nora flew down. The moment she saw me, she hugged me and cried uncontrollably. I patted her back. Babe, I'm still alive. You're crying a bit too early. How could you be so cruel? You didn't even tell me. I wasn't going to hide it forever. I still need you to bury me. She cried even harder. Nora and I grew up in the same orphanage. That was why a tiny bit of warmth from others could make us sacrifice everything. To me, Nora was my fiercest shield. For nearly 30 years, no matter how capable others thought I was, she always felt I needed her protection. It had been that way since our first day at the orphanage. When her boyfriend got jealous of us, she told him, "Grow up. I've only known you for a few days. I've known Rachel my whole life. Don't even try to compare yourself to her." I knew she really liked him, and he was a good guy. I always forced her to go on her dates, and she would reluctantly look back at me with every step. I asked her how she found out about my illness. She said she visited Lily's grave and noticed the adjacent plot had been purchased. Her gut told her something was wrong. With so many empty spots, who would specifically buy the one next to a child? She went to the cemetery office and saw my signature. Even though I used an alias, she knew my handwriting too well. Then she went to my usual hospital and used her connections to check my medical records. Her intuition was always deadly accurate. Long ago during a group dinner, she told me Mark was cheating. I told her she was talking nonsense without proof. She said, "He didn't peel the shrimp for you tonight." For a woman, that's proof enough. Who would have thought she was right? But that was all ancient history. Although I loved him deeply and hadn't fully forgotten him, I refused to waste my limited time on trash. Let's get you treated. Maybe there's a miracle, Nora tried to persuade me. You know what late stage means. I don't want to spend my final days hooked up to tubes in a hospital, I said calmly. You always look fragile, but you're stronger than anyone, Nora said helplessly. She was the second person to tell me that. The first person was Brandon, who was currently in New York. He once told me Mark wasn't right for me because his ambition didn't match our relationship. He predicted that one day, I would be forced off the train. But I stubbornly chose Mark because I met Mark first, and he was the one who first brought light into my life. Chapter 7. Nora stayed with me for a week. She told me she was going back to quit her job, settle things with her boyfriend, and come back to stay with me until the end. I didn't stop her. I left Nora a 9-figure inheritance. It was enough for her to open her dream coffee and flower shop without dealing with creepy bosses. I couldn't tell her yet, or she would immediately go fight Mark out of pure emotion. Even so, when she returned, she brought trouble with her. Seeing Mark's face at my door, I sighed heavily. Why couldn't he just let me enjoy the sun in peace? Mark buried his face in my blanket, silent, but his shoulders shook violently as he sobbed. I said, "Go back. You came to see me, so our past debt is settled." He grabbed my hand. "Rachel, you can't leave me. I can't live in a world without you." I calmly pulled my hand away. "You have your path, and I have mine. We were just two intersecting lines. Once we pass the intersection, we will never meet again. No one dies from a breakup. You'll get used to it." Mark looked up at me, looking as devoted as he did 10 years ago. "I won't abandon you." "You got it wrong, Mark. You didn't abandon me. I don't want you anymore. You can't do this to me. You can't. The moment your heart or body left me, it was over. You ended it yourself." Mark actually burst into tears, completely broken. "I never planned to cheat, I swear. I don't love Chloe, I only love you. But when you had the miscarriage, I felt so useless as a man for letting you lose the baby from overwork. I couldn't handle the guilt. I had some drinks, ran into Chloe, and it just happened." "Oh, so it started back then." I nodded. "While I was going through the most painful, helpless moment of my life, he found comfort in another woman. Truly pathetic. Is there any man trashier than him? Losing Lily broke my soul, but I was so worried about his grief that I forced myself to hide my tears in front of him. I ruined my own health holding it in, while he jumped into a comfortable bed with a mistress. I must have been completely blind. What hurt most was realizing he never truly loved Lily. If he cared even a little, how could he do that at such a time? My poor Lily, at least your mother loves you. It was my fault for choosing a terrible father for you. I will come join you soon and give you all my love." Nora suddenly stormed into the room and slapped Mark across the face. "Are you trying to kill Rachel faster by telling her this trash? You only care about clearing your own conscience. Do you have any idea how Rachel feels hearing this? When she lost Lily, she lost half her life, and you were hiding in a mistress's bed. Now you say you regret it? You and Chloe are just shameless dogs in heat. Get the hell out of here." Mark clung to my bed. "No matter what you say or do, I am not leaving her. Get out. I need to rest." Looking at him, I felt absolute despair. "I'm not going anywhere." Mark refused to budge. Left with no choice, I had to ask the landlord to get 2 guys to drag him out. Chapter 8. Nora apologized to me. She said when she went back to pack, she ran into Mark, who was searching for me like a madman. He claimed he couldn't function without me. He told her, "Rachel is like water. You think she's gentle, quiet, and easy to ignore, but then you realize she's everywhere. She's there when I eat, sleep, brush my teeth, or sit in the office. Every time I open or close my eyes, my mind is full of her. How can I live without water?" A late confession is cheaper than dirt. Fortunately, he wasn't in my face right now, so I finally got some peace. Today, Nora and I wanted to visit the forest park to get a preview of what heaven looked like. My life was short, but I always tried to help people and never harmed anyone, so I deserved to go to heaven. The moment we walked out, we found Mark camping right outside the guest house. When he saw us, he followed at a short distance. No matter what we said, he stuck to us like glue. He swore he would never leave me. I asked, "Will you follow me when I die?" He said, "Yes." Nora mocked him, "Rachel is going to heaven, and you are going to hell. Do you think you two are going to the same place? You still want to drag her down?" Chapter 9. Mark said nervously, "Since I found out you were sick, I've done a lot of charity work to pray for you. I even donated to your old orphanage. They don't have to worry about funding ever again." "You donated to the orphanage? Didn't you say the orphanage was a twisted place that only raised love-starved women who couldn't leave men?" That was what he said when he forced me to sign the divorce papers. He knew exactly how to stab my heart. All the vulnerability I once shared with him became weapons he used against me. By the time I let go, he had already shattered me completely. Nora kept saying she wanted to beat him up to relieve her anger. I smiled. "If you do that, it will only lessen his guilt." "Are you trying to help him?" "I'm just afraid you'll soften up and forgive him." "It feels like a loss if we don't hit him," Nora said bitterly. "How could I ever forgive him? Forgiving him would be an insult to all the faithful men out there. Then he gets off scot-free. He should die young. Letting him live every day in regret and misery is the real punishment. The longer he lives, the more he suffers. We don't need to do anything. We just need to be happy. If you spend every day in pain, you might as well end it early to save yourself the torture." "You really are cold-blooded about this," Nora laughed, giving me a thumbs up. So, the two of us began to party like crazy. We went sea fishing together and walked back to the guest house under the moonlight. Mark was asleep by the door, still wearing his clothes. We stepped right over him and went inside. We went to a bar and got approached by a few guys. Mark immediately walked up and smashed a beer bottle over one guy's head. The group surrounded him and beat him to a pulp. We just glanced at the fight and walked away. We went to see the sunrise, and Mark followed every step. We went into the restroom to avoid him, and when we came out, he was standing right outside staring at the door, earning himself curses for being a pervert. He really looked like one. No matter what we said or did, he didn't say a word. He just silently followed us, guarding me every second. Honestly, I felt like I would be annoyed to death before the cancer could kill me. I didn't want to waste my remaining time on him. I had to find a way to shake this trash off. Chapter 10. I told Nora to call Chloe and tell her to drag her man away. I couldn't stand the sight of him. Seeing him would cut my remaining lifespan in half. Chloe flew in that very day. When she stormed into my room, Nora happened to be out running errands. She marched right up to me in her high heels and raised her hand to slap me, screaming, "You old hag. Just die already. How dare you shamelessly seduce someone else's husband?" I was amazed she actually knew seducing a husband was shameless. I thought she lacked that concept entirely. I was also amazed Mark fell for such a moron. It was an insult to my taste. Since I was sick, I couldn't dodge the blow, and my cheek instantly turned red. I sneered. "Someone else's husband? Did he marry you?" Mark had divorced me, but he hadn't rushed to marry her. That was her biggest insecurity. Being exposed made her fly into a rage. Mark, who had just returned to the doorway from the restroom, froze when he saw Chloe. "Why are you here?" He frowned. Chloe immediately ran up, wrapped her arms around him, and pressed her body against his. She said in a whiny voice, "I missed you so much. I was worried you'd face trouble with Rachel, so I came to help." Her speed in switching characters shocked me. So Mark liked this fake type. Mark frowned. "Go to the hotel first. I'll meet you later." As Chloe turned to leave, I snapped, "Hold on." I walked up to her and delivered a powerful slap right across her face. "That's for earlier. Next time you raise a hand against me, I won't hesitate to break it." Chloe didn't expect me to strike her in front of Mark. She took the hit completely and instantly looked at Mark with tears in her eyes. Mark turned to me. Was that necessary? Take your mistress and get the hell out of here. Don't disgust me. Nora walked in just in time to see this. She noticed my swollen face and roared, "Who did this?" Mark finally noticed my cheek and turned to glare at Chloe. Chloe looked like a terrified little bird. She blamed me for stealing you and hit me first. I just accidentally clipped her while trying to block. Mark said to me, "She's sick, Chloe. Couldn't you just let her have her way?" Let me have my way. I almost threw up. Gathering all my strength, I slapped Chloe again with lightning speed. A flash of pure malice appeared in Chloe's eyes before she quickly hid it behind her pathetic act. Mark frowned. What are you doing now? Didn't she say I hit her first? I had to make that a reality, or she'd be a liar. I inspected her face. There, perfectly symmetrical. Now get out. Mark dragged a reluctant Chloe away. Nora and I finally breathed a sigh of relief. Chapter 11. However, before the night even ended, Mark was back camping at the door. He claimed he had broken things off with Chloe and would compensate her with company shares to make her leave. Unbelievable. He was giving away shares of the company I built to that woman. He really wanted to speed up my death. How did I ever fall for this toxic man? I must have been completely blind. I resolved to get as far away from him as possible. On New Year's Eve, fireworks erupted over the beach. I used to crave sitting on the sand with Mark, watching the fireworks reflect on the ocean. Now, he was setting off fireworks while looking at me with hope. Rachel, I'll set off fireworks for you every single year, okay? My condition was deteriorating fast. Sometimes, an entire handful of painkillers couldn't stop the agony. What future was there to talk about? But tonight, maybe because the fireworks were beautiful or the moonlight was perfect, I actually answered gently, okay. Mark probably didn't expect me to agree. He got so excited he looked like a puppy thrown a bone. The three of us had late-night snacks and went back to the apartment. For the first time, Mark slept on the living room sofa. He sighed happily, "This is the hardest won happiness of my life." Sure, enjoy it. The New Year's gift was just the beginning. Nora shoved Mark, who was knocked out cold. A small dose of sleeping pills had sent him right to sleep. We grabbed our packed bags and left immediately. We were heading to Yellowstone National Park, a place the two of us had always dreamed of visiting. Back at the orphanage, a visiting priest had shown us pictures of Yellowstone. Nora and I joked that once we got rich, we would live there for a whole year. Now we had the money, but I didn't have a year left. Nora handled all the preparations. She laughed, "It's great being with a rich girl. Everything processes so fast. Money really talks." In reality, she was terrified I wouldn't survive long enough to see it, so she skipped sleep to apply for visas, buy tickets, book rooms, and plan the route. Meeting Mark was my misfortune, but thank God he gave me Nora. Chapter 12. When we landed in the US, I turned on my phone. Hundreds of missed calls from unknown numbers flooded in, along with a massive essay via text from Mark. He begged me to just let him know where I was. He said he wouldn't go anywhere and would wait for me right at that guest house. I deleted the message. I wasn't wasting another second on him. 2 days later, the landlord sent me a photo. In it, Mark was still wearing his New Year's Eve clothes, completely unshaven, curled up by the entrance. He looked like a stray dog. The landlord complained that his presence was scaring away potential renters. I told him to call the police. The landlord said he did, but the moment Mark was released from the station, he went right back to the door. I told the landlord to handle it however he wanted and pretend I didn't know the man. Mark and I were completely finished. I never dreamed we would cross paths again. Chapter 13. Yellowstone didn't disappoint. The scenery was breathtakingly grand. Unfortunately, I didn't have much energy left to explore. Nora gave me a massive surprise by booking the best room at the Lake Yellowstone Hotel. Usually, you had to book a year in advance to get a spot. Lying in bed, I could see the stunning view of the lake. I asked Nora how she managed it. She hesitated before admitting, I contacted Brandon. Seeing Brandon made me feel a bit awkward. First, because I knew he had feelings for me back then and I turned him down. Second, because his prediction about Mark had come true, leaving me in a pathetic state. Brandon looked just as elegant and refined as he did 10 years ago. He didn't ask about Mark or my illness, sparing me the embarrassment. He got straight to the point. I contacted Dr. Wright's research group at a top medical school. You need to go over tomorrow for tests to see if you qualify for the trial. They are developing a targeted drug for your specific type of cancer. The first 2 clinical phases showed an 85% cure rate and a 98% 5-year survival rate. They are in phase 3 now. You arrived late, so we need to move fast. I asked him what would happen if I didn't qualify. Would I die soon? Honestly, I wasn't afraid of death. My only worry was Nora. He said, if this group doesn't work, I'll find another one. I won't let you die. I quietly pleaded with him, if I die, please take care of Nora. He frowned, which was rare for him. Stay alive and take care of her yourself. Don't dump your responsibilities onto others. He was always so cold and blunt. The next morning, Nora dragged me to the medical school for tests. Waiting for the results was agonizing. I had a bad feeling about it. It turned out my intuition was right again. Chapter 14. When Brandon came to find me with the results, I could tell he was shaken inside. He forced himself to look calm. Your data doesn't match the trial criteria, so you can't use the new drug. But we can look for other research groups that fit your case. How long do I have left? If we find an effective treatment, you'll live. If not, 1 month. I nodded. I understand. I turned to Nora. Let's go home. I want to be with Lily. Nora broke down in tears. Seeing how fragile she actually was despite her tough exterior made me terrified to leave her alone in this world. If I left my company shares to her, Mark and Chloe would eat her alive until nothing was left. 1 month was enough time for me to strip that toxic couple of their power and hand a clean, intact company over to Nora. Nora mentioned that based on Mark's behavior in Miami, she thought he was deeply in love with me. I laughed. He's deeply in love with the shares in my hand. I was the second largest shareholder. Since I was dying, who got those shares mattered immensely. If he truly loved me, do you think Chloe would have dared to be that arrogant? Brandon asked for 1 more week to find another treatment team. I refused. That was too unpredictable. If it failed, I wouldn't have enough time to secure things for Nora. To an ordinary person, a week is just 7 days. To me, it was a quarter of my remaining life. I couldn't waste a single day. Chapter 15. I told Nora to post on her social media, hinting that I had passed away. Nora's eyes were red as she complained it was bad luck. I laughed, can a post cut my life short? If so, Chloe would have posted 1,000 times by now. Do you want me to die in misery while Chloe spends my money and sleeps with my ex-husband? Nora posted it through her tears. I told her that when Mark called, she needed to keep crying to make sure he believed I was gone. Sure enough, within 15 minutes, Mark called. His voice sounded frantic. Are you in the US? Where's Rachel? Nora didn't answer directly, she just cried and cursed at him. Mark completely bought it. What an idiot. He howled like a grieving donkey for a bit, then asked, did she leave a will? What about her company shares? The company needs to issue an announcement. Nora followed my script. I haven't seen a will, it's with the executor. But she told me verbally that all her shares go to me. Mark muttered an agreement and seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. After hanging up, Nora gave me a thumbs up. Brilliant. How did you know he'd call? How did you know he'd ask that? I smiled faintly. The best part is yet to come. Just enjoy the show, and you get all the profits at the end. Isn't that great? Chapter 16. The next day, as expected, the company issued an announcement. Mark transferred 3% of his shares to Chloe. He must have been absolutely certain I was dead to dare do this, since I was the only shareholder who could challenge him. He held 26%, and I held 25%. If we stayed together, our combined 51% ensured absolute control. By transferring his shares to Chloe, his personal holding dropped to 23%, making me the single largest shareholder. This was exactly what I was waiting for. According to the corporate bylaws, although the largest shareholder didn't have over half the shares to make absolute decisions, they held a veto power. If Mark hadn't given the shares to Chloe, I might have tolerated him running the company. Using the business I bled for to reward a mistress was the final straw. Since they loved each other so much, I would give them a chance to start from scratch to test their true love. Chapter 17. My body was getting weaker by the day, and any further delay would make it impossible to endure a long flight. To keep Mark from tracking my location, I immediately applied for a private jet route and returned to Shanghai the next day via a third country. Nora took a direct commercial flight. Mark wouldn't find out my travel history until after I died. Mark used some dirty tricks to finalize the share transfer. I knew they were dirty because we had a strict agreement regarding share transfers. He was so sure I was dead that he chose to violate it. I honestly wanted to appear by his bed at midnight to scare him half to death. Nora arrived at the headquarters dressed in all black, demanding a board meeting to re-elect the chairman. When Mark saw my signed authorization letter, he was completely dumbfounded. The rest of the board members uniformly agreed Mark was competent and shouldn't be removed. Nora sat there calmly, listening to the directors praise him without moving a muscle. Once everyone finished talking, Nora said, "On behalf of the largest shareholder, I exercise the veto power. We object to Mark remaining as chairman. As for who takes the position, we will vote according to the legal procedure." After making sure the board secretary recorded her objection, Nora walked out effortlessly, leaving the company in total chaos. Mark tried a desperate move, attempting to declare that he and Chloe were voting as a bloc, which would give them the largest combined stake again. Chapter 18. But the corporate lawyers informed him that because the bylaws explicitly granted veto power only to the single largest shareholder, declaring a bloc was useless. Mark began secretly investigating the passenger lists for flights from the US, suspecting I wasn't dead. He knew Nora didn't have the brains for this setup, but I did. He believed that if he could just find me, he could change my mind. After all, I had spent 10 years chasing his footsteps. However, his search only showed Nora's travel records. He became convinced I was dead again. So, he decided to buy back Chloe's shares, which was the fastest way to become the largest shareholder again. To his surprise, Chloe refused. She had climbed through the mud for years to finally taste real wealth. There was no way she would give it back. Ultimately, Mark had to sacrifice massive assets to get her agreement. I sneered internally. Chloe turned out to be greedy, money-loving, and incredibly stupid. If it were me, I would have planned a counter-strategy long ago, but she was too short-sighted, clinging to those 3% shares. Chloe was also realizing how useless Mark actually was. After all his years of striving, he still lost the chairmanship to a dying woman. The crack in their relationship appeared, and it would only grow wider. The moment Mark announced the buyback of Chloe's shares, he received a court summons and an asset freezing order. Chloe's shares were frozen. On my first day back in Shanghai, I had Nora hire a prominent corporate attorney to file a lawsuit, declaring Mark's transfer to Chloe invalid and claiming ownership of those shares. The lawyer noted Nora wasn't the proper plaintiff, so Nora produced my authorization and our binding agreement, which had already been registered. Before the company went public, Mark and I signed an agreement to secure absolute control, stating neither could transfer shares without the other's consent. If a transfer occurred, the other party had the right of first refusal. If one party breached the contract, the disputed shares would automatically transfer to the innocent party. Mark went to court with total confidence. Since I was dead, the agreement couldn't be enforced. The court couldn't exactly go to the afterlife to get my opinion. When I walked into the courtroom and sat at the plaintiff's table, Mark collapsed into his chair, unable to stand up. Even an idiot like him knew the game was completely over. I won the lawsuit easily. Chapter 19. But I had no interest in running the company anymore. We hired a professional CEO, and I just collected the profits. I invested in Nora and her boyfriend to open a chain of coffee and flower shops, which was her dream business, allowing her to live happily and comfortably. I bought out Mark's remaining shares and gifted them to Nora. Why did Mark sell his shares to me? Because he was consumed by fury, regret, and misery every single day. He resorted to heavy drinking and gambling, eventually losing all his wealth and ruining his health. As for his beloved Chloe, she became the assistant to a 70-year-old businessman. After the businessman's wife hired people to give her a brutal lesson, she vanished from Shanghai completely, and nobody knew where she went. As for me, I survived way past that 1-month deadline. A week after I returned to China, Brandon followed me back. He said he brought me special calcium tablets to relieve the pain and told me to take them. In reality, it was the new drug he obtained from Dr. Wright. My body responded incredibly well to the targeted therapy, and I was clinically cured. I found out later that his condition for getting the drug was signing a contract to work as the chief financial officer for the company funding Dr. Wright's research, for a salary of just $1 a year. It was basically a slave contract. The day after Brandon went back to New York, I followed him there. If a rich girl like me didn't take care of him, how could he survive on $1 a year? He leaned in and whispered to me, "Actually, it also comes with 10% of the company's stock options." I laughed. "Why didn't you say so earlier? You made me worry for nothing." He smiled too. "If I told you earlier, you wouldn't have come, right? It feels amazing to have someone in this world who understands you completely."